one of the most volatile few days in the crypto market to date. What is going on? We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift weekly recap, actionable insights, and a breakdown into the crypto market, all in under 30 minutes. It's been quite the roller coaster ride the past few days, up and down, almost makes you sick in a way of looking at the charts, all emotions. And I'm sure anyone tuning in is being familiar with just how crazy things have been. Simon, did you manage to tune out while all the chaos was going on?
You know what? In so many ways, I wish I'd just, gone away for a week and come back and I could have avoided this roller coaster ride that's been going on. And I mean, we're literally, recording this just the day after, I guess, the Trump pump. So it's been a hell of a ride and it's been pretty crazy to see. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that the market could be this volatile, but, crypto never seems to, never really, maybe it doesn't, it never ceases to amaze us about how crazy it can be. That's probably the better take on it.
Yeah, for anyone living under a rock, in case Bitcoin last 24 hours is down 8%, ETH at the time recording down 13%, XRP down 16%, still up slightly over the course of the week. What's more important really is to get into the reasons why I suppose we ripped up so quickly and then came down just as quickly, because I think it will really set the scene of, I guess, where we are currently in the market and what we're, I guess, looking for in the foreseeable future, really. So I think just to quickly, not going to labor on this too much because everyone would have really seen it, but I think we have to start really on this tweet or this truth post from Donald Trump on a Sunday. It was over there in the States, which in and of itself was quite odd, announcing that the crypto reserve is going to go ahead, essentially. And he also, here, as you can see on your screen, pointed out that the crypto reserve will feature the likes of XRP, Solana, and Cardano. As you can imagine, the price of those just rocketed higher in the minutes and a couple of hours after that. He did actually clarify about an hour later that, of course, Bitcoin and ETH, which combined account for about 70% of the entire market, he eventually clarified that, hey, those two will, of course, be at the heart of the reserve. So, again, we can get into the effects of this, I suppose, are worth dissecting a bit here. I think it was a shock to the whole market, and that's why we saw prices just rip up higher, because as we've covered quite extensively, at the end of January, Trump famously sort of signed that executive order on crypto, more or less just giving a working group a number of months to go ahead and find and recommend certain actions that he should take or what he should not take with respect to regulating crypto in the US. A part of that involved whether or not the US government should have their own crypto reserve, which was very much up in the air. So it was, quite a shock to the system when Donald Trump came out on Sunday and more or less just skipped over that whole process and basically said that he wants the working group to move forward with this strategic reserve. For those unaware, he gave a deadline of about sometime in July, for this working group to come back to him with their recommendations about a strategic reserve. So here we are 5 or 6 weeks later with Trump sort of, I guess, expediting that process. So that's why it came as such a shock. And I suppose there were many other sort of talking points, I guess, from this, but I guess due to time, I guess it was only relevant for a very short amount of time, Simon, as we'll get into quickly. But was there anything specifically on this Trump, I guess, post that really, I guess, caught your attention?
Well, I think what really caught my attention is XRP, Sol, and Cardano as potential strategic reserves. And it did make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the strategic reserves that the US currently has is like gold, oil, and I think medical supplies are kind of their main strategic reserves. There's probably some other random things in there. The most obscure and funny strategic reserve I've heard of is that Canada has maple syrup as a strategic reserve because they're the global supplier of maple syrup. So they keep a stockpile there in case production goes low so that the whole world still gets maple syrup. And so that's the funny one, but like Cardano, XRP, and even Solana doesn't make a lot of sense to me to be in that strategic reserve. It doesn't fit in my mind. And so why was Trump doing this? I mean, there's all sorts of questions marks about the timing of it. But I think the best take that I've kind of come to is not necessarily my own, I've obviously formed it from someone else, is that this is Trump's negotiating style. Just before, like, how he talked about wanting to make Canada part of the US, or he wanted to annex Greenland, he comes out very heavy in his negotiating strategies. And I think that's what this is, probably. It makes more sense to me. He's coming out saying we want Cardano and all these other US-made ones, because he's very pro-USA, sure, that's fine, don't have a problem with that. But they don't make sense as a strategic reserve. And so he comes out with this rather outlandish claim or outlandish statement. And so then falling back onto actually just having a Bitcoin strategic reserve now seems quite palatable to people opposed to the view. So that's my take on it. I can't see the other ones being suitable, and I don't think I'm the only one. I know Brian Armstrong, he tweeted out, the CEO of Coinbase, he tweeted out saying that Bitcoin makes sense, the others don't. And even Peter Schiff, very much so an anti-Bitcoin person, he even tweeted out saying he can see Bitcoin making sense as a strategic reserve, but not the other ones. So quite the mixed bag of people, but all kind of agreeing with me in that only Bitcoin makes sense.
Yeah, certainly. Once everyone tried to process what was happening, I think that was very much the consensus, and everyone drawing analogies to even homegrown stocks in the US. Like, why, if we're gonna have Solana, why doesn't the US have things like Apple in their strategic reserve, and analogies like that. And then once you think about it more and what the purpose and use case of something like Bitcoin is versus all of these more tech focused tokens and cryptocurrencies, I think everyone sort of landed at the same area there with respect to what this crypto reserve is actually going to be, which again, there's still a number of questions about. Okay, is this sort of irrelevant in the sense that we're still going to have to wait until July to get a report recommending what cryptocurrencies, if any, are going to be in a reserve or a stockpile? And then there's also then the question of, all right, is this going to have to go through a legislative process of going through House of Representatives and the Senate, or is it just going to be something that Trump more or less orders from his office that goes in? And then of course you have pros and cons to doing that, which are continuing to be discussed, but there's still a lot of uncertainty regarding this strategic reserve, and certainly I guess more questions even were added to that after this weekend's events. But we certainly had an extreme rally from that news. After a week of capitulation, really, we saw a lot of altcoins had already started to lose their major trend lines throughout February, middle of February, and that certainly, if they hadn't already lost them, they did at the end of February. And even Bitcoin, losing that 90,000 sort of support and actually breaking into the 80,000s and briefly dipping into the high 70,000s US dollars. That is, it was quite a bloodbath there, and that really, I suppose, spurred a rally in a very illiquid conditions over the weekend, and there was a lot of sort of long liquidations, which sort of, I suppose, amplified the upside there. And just as quickly as we came up, Simon, we really, I guess, plummeted overnight just at the time of recording, and it feels like this whole episode didn't even happen.
It really doesn't. So if you missed the last 2 days, then you know it at all. And it was, very similar to if you missed when Trump released his meme coin. If you weren't there on the day it happened, then you really pretty much missed most of it in 2 days' time. And so that's kind of what this has been. I mean, let's not forget that the Fear and Greed Index was down at 10. It's one of the lowest scores it's been in a very long time. So that's a big indicator of how fearful the market was. And I think everyone got a little bit overexcited by this tweet because it was really an announcement of nothing too much other than what's currently already ongoing. And I don't think that it was, a timing for the markets in general to really continue a pump. It was literally just a flash in the pan kind of pump. And there's probably bots out there who, hey, Trump tweets something positive about crypto, we start buying, and that kind of had a little cascade event. But I don't know. Looking back again, still, I think this is probably not good for crypto in the long run. It's great that Trump's constantly bullish on crypto in general, but seeing, Solana going up 25% in a day and then down 25% in a day, it's not great. Yeah,
and of course, a big reason why we did, plummet back down in price was A bunch of reasons, as it always is, but a big factor there was, those tariffs that were originally delayed by 30 days, now 30 days ago, or 29 days ago, Trump confirmed that, hey, they are actually going ahead and that there's no room for any last minute negotiations from the likes of Canada and Mexico. So a 25% tariff there imposed by the US. And, additionally, China is at the receiving end of an additional 10% tariff. So doubling there from 10% to 20%. And there's still no confirmation on whether Trump even goes higher than that in the future on China. So he confirmed that, it was looking likely that it was going ahead, these March 4 tariffs, and I suppose confirmation there coming through that, hey, he's not budging. And on top of that, Trump also confirmed that at the start of April, so April the 2nd, is when he's planning on imposing several retaliatory tariffs as well. So that, I guess, we'll continue to see tariffs in the headlines for the foreseeable future is a big takeaway there. They're negative for many reasons on the economy and whatnot, and ultimately isn't really a favorable environment for something like risk assets. You don't want to see such anti-growth sort of policies, hitting the global economy at a time when it's still quite fragile. In particular, with a lot of economies still, really struggling to grow at a really sufficient rate. So, yeah, that really, hurt global stocks, particularly in the US. There, we saw, quite heavy sell-offs, even around 2% or so on all of the indexes. I think the Dow Jones or S&P is down now 5 to 6% off of its all-time highs, and it's now down, I think 3 consecutive weeks there in the red for the major stocks. And then, of course, the sort of high beta tech stocks are down, even like a lot more severely than that. I guess analogous to altcoins in the crypto space. So, a lot of reasons ultimately that are more powerful. That being the macro stuff that we just talked about, and other macro factors also contributing to why crypto has had such a sharp sell-off.
It always comes back to, when the traditional markets, get a cold kind of thing, then crypto markets get the flu. So we feel that shock much more than the other markets because the lower market caps and, it's far more volatile, far more risk assets. So they obviously move a lot. I think the main, takeaway I get from the extra tariffs on Canada is maybe my point earlier is that maybe we'll get some cheaper maple syrup here now. I don't know.
Yeah, certainly. I think always welcome that. With the other news, I think the big takeaway for me when I look back on this week as well is fundamentally we had a lot of promising news. Again, I know it's quite US centric, but at the end of the day, that's where a lot of the price action is responding to, for better or worse. And we had several news items throughout the past week that were quite favorable towards crypto, and I suppose more reinforcement that there are signs that the US is serious about, crypto being, quite a friendly environment there in the US. So yes, we did have Trump's controversial sort of strategic announcement, strategic crypto reserve update that we just spoke about earlier. I suppose in addition to that, we had, David Sachs, who's overseeing AI and crypto at a federal level. He said there's going to be more to come on, I guess, in addition to Trump's sort of update that we spoke about. He sort of added a comment onto that a couple of hours after that, saying there'll be more to come at the inaugural crypto summit on March the 7th. So that summit was announced very late last week. And again, it's just sort of a get together of all of the, I guess, movers and shakers in the industry. A lot of lobbying personalities there, I'm sure. And we'll see what Trump will actually be talking and delivering a speech at this summit on March the 7th. So we'll see, what he has to say, whether it's just a repetition of things he said previously or whether it'll be any new updates. That will certainly be a price sensitive sort of event. I would expect. So mark that down in your calendar for a short-term date. But that was a sign one of multiple signs, which we'll get into another couple of them soon, but that was one of multiple signs that ultimately we're seeing progress in terms of favoring towards the crypto space in the US.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think it's, I think everyone's focused going, oh, what's going to be about the strategic Bitcoin reserve? And I think people are forgetting that there's more than just that kind of going on in their minds.
100%.
I mean, the interesting thing, I guess, that about David Sachs, which I didn't know, but he did confirm it in a tweet, is that he sold all of his cryptocurrencies that he owns when he got the new title of Crypto Czar to avoid any conflict of interest, which was, noble of him if it's true, because that's not common for government officials, as we know. But my speculation of what's going on here is, what else they're going to announce? So Trump's kind of already fired the gun about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and I think everyone wants to get more details on that. I think it's going to be light on that to a degree. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be about that. I'm thinking more stablecoin regulation. I think that's possibly what they're going to focus on. I mean, because to me, it still makes the most sense for the US to defend its dollar as the world reserve currency is to embrace stablecoins. And, I think the stats is like 90% of the stablecoins that exist in crypto are denominated in US dollars. So that to me is an absolute no-brainer for the US to want to maintain and control. So I think there might be some more statements around that, more statements around regulation in general is probably where they're going to open up investment in the US for businesses to stay in the US for one and be created in the US. I think it's going to be more around that kind of related thing. I think there'll be minimal talk about the strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Yeah, for sure. I'm expecting much the same, given there's also the working group with the executive order already. They already have gone off and are, I guess, studying, doing all their research and whatnot. So they're already at work on that. So I struggle to see any updates related to the reserve, as you said, Simon. And I suppose just, branching off on other sort of positive news, all in the same sort of theme of the US, again, becoming more crypto friendly. And for those who are a bit newer to crypto, it's hard to sort of understate just how hostile conditions had been for the crypto space over the past few years since the FTX collapse. But that is being undone after this sort of new administration, as Trump promised throughout last year. And I guess the SEC, if we talked about, I think, Mark Ueda coming in as the acting chair, replacing Gary Gensler, and he's been in for 5 or 6 weeks now, and already the SEC has closed investigations, some of them going for multiple years, into a lot of US-based companies. As you can see on your screen there, for those listening on the podcast, just as we went over, I think last week, Uniswap Labs and Coinbase, probably the two most noteworthy of that list, but there were even more that were added in recent days. And even since this graphic, there's been Kraken overnight, another exchange that has been back and forth with the SEC for must be about 5 years now, and also Yuga Labs, one of the larger NFT projects, today also saying that the SEC has ended investigations after, I think they said 3 years in their case that they had been investigated for. So very promising to see. Again, I think overall this is not a shock in the market. I think it's more or less was expected. The pace of it has been quite surprising to me and to the upside. But ultimately, I think price doesn't really move in response to these things because ultimately they were more or less expected over time. And ultimately, it's all signs that point to longer term, I guess, benefits for crypto in particular. So sticking with the SEC here before we move on. Another very important thing we think you should know about is that they have established, the crypto task force was recently established again in the opening weeks of Trump's administration. And we've had an update from them just in the past on March the 3rd there, saying that they're now going to host a series of roundtables, again, with sort of the heavyweights in the industry and certain policymakers. We're seeing here that they're having an initial session. I think they're having a series of 5 roundtables. The first one being on March the 21st there. So it looks like they're going to have a focus on sort of what is the legal status of cryptocurrencies, which again has been a big unknown over the years and has definitely impacted the investment case for cryptocurrencies. So that initial one on March 21st will be heavily watched, I'm sure, and it'll be publicly streamed as well. So yeah, again, yet another sign that things are moving in the right direction.
And this is just one of many three-letter acronym kind of groups in the US who are doing this, because the crypto working group created by Trump is part of the SEC, the Commodities Exchange Commission, a whole bunch of different US government departments are all having to get together to get their different viewpoints on it. So this is one of many. It's probably one that's going to be watched the most because the SEC has had the most impact on crypto in the last years. So that's why it's going to be one to watch. But this is, I guess, building towards, and we're slowly going to get drip fed out all these kind of ideas about what this working group's going to actually conclusion is going to be. So this could be the start, I think, of the news coming out about where the working group is actually going to lead to. So we should have an idea before it's presented to Trump what's the outcome's going to be, I think.
Yes. Yeah, well said there. In terms of the final one here, we've just got an update from from BlackRock here. Simon, I'll get this one up on my screen if you take this one. Just more adoption, it looks like.
More adoption, it's always good. I mean, BlackRock and crypto, let's face it, they've got a big name. Whenever they put crypto together with it, it always gets people excited to a degree. And obviously they were the instigators of the Bitcoin ETF. So let's not forget how much BlackRock's influence actually is on the whole cryptocurrency space. And so I kind of think that when it comes to crypto allocation, and if we've got BlackRock sitting there promoting more, it doesn't really matter what it is, that it's always going to be positive news. But we're in a downtrend, and so positive news doesn't actually move anything at the moment, I don't think.
Yeah, certainly. I think these passive sort of flows coming into default sort of these pre-configured models that like these wealth managers have, that or asset managers that they sort of put their clients into. I think that's a massive unlock for I guess adoption and demand for Bitcoin in a very indirect way, because instead of these clients having to come to these asset managers and asking them, hey, can I specifically, I found this IBIT, ETF, can I put some money into it? All of a sudden, if BlackRock's just putting 1 or 2% exposure to IBIT into various, I guess, designs of their portfolios, particularly the higher risk sort of ones, then again, that's passively just getting more demand for Bitcoin. And that's how I see a lot of, I guess, the reason for Bitcoin going to multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. I can see that being a big reason for that, just that passive demand where people are just holding Bitcoin, I guess, without even really, in many cases, not knowing that they actually are. So yeah,
I think that's a key thing you got there, is that people will be buying Bitcoin without actually knowing they're doing it, because it's just hidden away within their percentage allocation. So that's a huge thing. Many people wouldn't know what they're holding in a lot of these asset holdings, and now Bitcoin's just part of it, part of the basket.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess an opportunity for another sort of public instrument going live in the US got a big I guess tick last week with Solana here, Simon.
Yeah, so CME Group, which is like one of the biggest derivative marketplaces, is opening up Solana futures trading. So I think that's huge because it obviously just gives traditional finance exposure to Solana, and this kind of was the precursor when people started putting in these ETFs for spot trading of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then the Solana one came out, and everyone's going, well, the futures always has come beforehand. And that's like not just crypto, that's all traditional assets that a futures market usually comes beforehand. So, well, we're ticking that box in a way. Now the futures market is coming to Solana, to TradFi, before a spot ETF. And so I think that's kind of a big news. It's just the stepping stone for more of these things to get into play. Is the Solana ETF, if it gets through, going to be a big thing? I don't know, my gut's starting to tell me in the direction of no, but like it's great to see the continual adoption, the continual development, but obviously Bitcoin had a huge impact. Ethereum did not have a huge impact, and I think that Solana might be in that same kind of category, is that, futures is great, people will start trading it because people love taking leverage, so it's going to happen. And then it sets the framework for a Solana spot ETF, which is great, brings more attention. I don't think it'll drive price that much. I think what the eventual outcome in my mind of how these spot ETFs will really work well for crypto is an index. So you can buy a basket of crypto. That's, I think, kind of the thing that will be the bigger driver of more buying in the spot ETF space. But with only Bitcoin, Ethereum, it's not much of an index yet. You add Solana to that, maybe we've got an index.
Yeah, certainly. I think even the likes of Brian Armstrong and that have expressed interest in, launching a basket-like product in the future. And yeah, can definitely see that being the case. But yeah, good to get those steps, that progress already last week with Solana there. And in terms of things to look forward to for the week ahead, as I said, there's actually also quite a bit of economic data coming out in the US, which we're at a time when I think the market's starting to freak out a bit about the US economy slowing down. And I know that there are a couple more data points coming out this week, but I think in terms of crypto, absolutely the most important thing will be that crypto summit happening on Friday or Saturday, depending on where you are living around the world. But in terms of rapid fire this week, we'll wrap it up, Simon, with underrated or overrated. I'll hand it over to you.
Yep, so I actually don't know whether I'm going to call this under or over. I don't know, but my rapid fire thing, which is interesting, is that macro conditions are more powerful than a presidential tweet. And so while Trump can clearly pump a market based off what he said, like the macro conditions are still not that great. There's not huge economic activity or economic stimulus going on. And so Pump tweeted the market up and it just corrected itself right back down. So yeah, macro more powerful.
Yeah, well said there. And I am going to go underrated, I suppose. I didn't really see many people talking about this again. It was a chaotic week. Everyone was down bad, but this gave me some optimism. It was a research report by River, and yeah, just going into the Bitcoin adoption factors sort of shaping Bitcoin in 2025. Just a really, I guess, well put together report. It is nothing immediately to get excited about, but it will make you absolutely very bullish on just the longer term sort of journey for Bitcoin once you see all of the macro trends that have, I guess, are really in Bitcoin's favor, and also just broader tech trends as well. Even we're talking multiple decades with the demographics and all of that, people growing up on being a tech first sort of world that we're continuing to transition towards. It does a great job of just breaking down where Bitcoin's at. So if you are interested in just learning more about, why people are so excited about Bitcoin, I will link to this in the show notes. But yeah, we will wrap it up there for this week. And yeah, who knows what this roller coaster, where it will take us next, Simon, but we'll be on the ride.
Hopefully it's a little less volatile. I don't know. That's too much for me this past week.
Honestly, yeah, I share that as well. But that is a wrap for this week. So we will keep on delivering these insights. And if you do want more than the podcast, we also have our weekly newsletter as well. So you can subscribe to that. That's free market insights straight to your inbox every Friday. So subscribe to that at collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.